Hi everyone, I'm Kenneth Oppel. I'm going to be reading today from my book, The Boundless. William Everett has gone up to a work camp in the mountains to meet his father, who's completing or helping complete the Canadian Pacific Railroad. And as William gets up there, he's just in time to witness the driving of the last spike in the railroad. In fact, he is asked to drive the last spike by none other than Cornelius Van Horn. I'm going to read you a little bit from the book about what happens right after William drives the last spike in the railroad. From down the tracks, the company locomotive blasts its whistle. Men take out their pistols and begin firing in the air. The shots echo between the snow-laden slopes. One great firework crackle. When the shooting subsides, the rumble is so low that it's barely audible, but Will can hear it, and he looks at his father in alarm. James Everett is shielding his eyes and staring at the summit. Will sees a patch of perfect snow pucker and slip raggedly away from the pack. Avalanche! James Everett bellows, pointing. Avalanche! Stay on top of it, Will, his father yells above the din. Swim! His father disappears in the blizzard, and Will runs blindly. The ground is a white rug being pulled out from beneath him. He staggers and knows that to fall is certain death. He throws his body forward and thrashes wildly, trying to stay atop the churning sea of snow. Something long and narrow whips past, nearly taking off his head, and he realizes it's a twisted measure of steel rail. Off to his right, he catches the dim shadow of his father swimming alongside him, and before he vanishes once more. Some high branches of a buried tree jut out of the blizzard, and Will makes a grab but is swept past. He knows he is being washed down through the sparse woods that grow right to the edge of the gorge. Another set of boughs looms up directly in front of him this time, and he clutches and holds fast. His body's lashed about by the driving force of the snow, but he won't release his grip, even as his head is covered in snow rammed up his nostrils. Stillness, then. Silence. Will thrusts his arm high, scooping wildly to break free. He sees a flash of sky and fills his lungs hungrily. Slowly, he hauls himself from the snow and into the arms of a tree. Shivering, he beholds a landscape transformed. The snow must be piled 20 feet high amongst the trees, some of which have keeled over. And from the trees comes a sound Will has never heard before, a series of gruff animal hoots that taper off into a kind of mournful sigh. Will, are you all right? 20 yards to his left, his father clings to a tree. I'm fine. I'll come over to you, his father calls. At the same moment, they see it. A little higher up the slope, jutting from the snow, is the gold spike that was driven to complete the railroad. A rustling sound draws Will's attention. A snow-caked man clings to another nearby tree, a scarf tied around his face, revealing only his eyes. Are you all right? Will's dad calls up to him. The man says nothing, just lifts a hand. His eyes, Will can tell, are on that golden spike. Help! This cry is muffled. It comes from down the slope, where not 40 feet from Will's perch, the ground drops into the gorge and the rioting river. Will squints. On the very edge, clutching the branch of a spindly, bent pine, his legs dangling over the edge, is none other than Cornelius Van Horn, the rail magnate. Hold tight, sir, Will's father calls out. I'm coming. He looks at the man with the scarf. Will you help me? The other man makes no reply, stays put. From the trees comes another series of gruff hoots. What is that? Will asks, but instinctively he knows. This branch won't hold much longer, Van Horn calls out with amazing calm. Will watches as his father carefully paddles down over the snow towards the rail baron, digging in with his hands and feet to slow himself. Off to the right, a heaping drift mutters and creaks and spills itself over the edge. Everything piled up there could give at any moment. You'll be all right, sir, Will's father says as he reaches the spindly pine and wraps his legs around the trunk. He reaches out towards Van Horn. I'm going to take your wrist, sir. You take mine. The rail baron is a large man, and Will hears his father grunt as he takes his weight. Bracing himself against the trunk, James Everett pulls. And after a minute, both men straining, the rail baron reaches the trunk and holds tight. They both lean their heads against the bark, catching their breath. Will exhales and hears a rustling behind him. He turns to see that other man easing himself down the slope toward the gold spike. He looks at Will and holds a swollen finger to his mouth. He plucks the golden spike from the snow. "You and me," he whispers to Will. "Got an understanding, ain't we? You call out. I'll find you and your pa and slit your throats. You got it?" Terrified, Will just stares at the man's obscured face, at the narrow band of skin around his chilly blue eyes. "I know you," Will thinks, but he says nothing. The man's name is Brogan, and Will had met him earlier, up at the work camp. Now Brogan turns and begins churning his way back up the slope, the stolen spike in his jacket. Brogan brushes a branch, and the end of that branch twitches and then clutches Brogan's ankle. With a grunt, Brogan tries to kick free, but the branch flexes and grows longer. Like some mutant tree unfolding itself from the earth, a long arm stretches out and sprouts a bony shoulder and a narrow head matted with snow. Brogan gives a cry of horror as he's dragged back. A skunky stench wafts across to Will as the Sasquatch thrashes itself up from the snow. Will now knows why the First Nations people call them stickmen, for their limbs are so thin yet powerful that they look like they've been made from the indestructible ingredients of the mountain forest. Will can see that this Sasquatch is a young one, quite a bit smaller than him, and though its mouth is wide and its teeth bared, Will isn't sure if the beast is attacking or merely clambering atop Brogan like someone trying not to drown. Brogan beats at the Sasquatch. From a pocket he pulls a long knife and stabs it in the shoulder. The Sasquatch crumples, sending up a terrible shriek. For a moment, Will thinks a treetop has snapped and fallen, for something thin and very tall hits the snow beside Brogan. But it's no tree. It is 7 feet of fury jumping down from above to protect its child. Will's insides feel liquid with fear. The creature's arms are vast knotted branches, its clawed feet gnarled roots. The adult Sasquatch reaches down and grabs Brogan by an arm and a leg, and in one movement hurls him. The golden spike flies clear of Brogan's clothing and lands in the snow not far from Will. Brogan himself sails through the air, skids across the snow with a squawk of terror, and disappears over the edge into the gorge. Chest heaving, the adult Sasquatch checks on its young, and then turns and looks straight at Will. And that's a little bit from the beginning of my book, The Boundless. I hope you enjoyed it.